Hello, coaches! Welcome back to another episode of Coach.Better from Eduro Learning. In this episode, we are chatting with Tico Oms, Middle School Dean of Students at the International School Bangkok. Tico shares his experience and perspective as a school leader coming from a background in the fast-moving tech industry. Tico helps define the power of coaching in an innovative school environment, as well as the potential of being a lone island of trust if you're working in a more traditional school structure. His vision for coaching and leading from the middle is inspiring and a fantastic model and resource for both coaches and school leaders alike.
If you're new here, welcome. My name is Clint Hamada.
And my name is Kim Cafino, and we're your hosts for this series. Between the two of us, we have almost 40 years of coaching experience in schools around the world, and we want to help you coach better.
So whether you're already a coach or you're just getting started, we're passionate about helping you take that next step in your coaching journey by sharing thoughtful, professional conversations about coaching and learning with experts from around the world.
And you might notice that Clint and I are never in the same room. That's because I live in Bangkok and Clint lives in Beijing. But we are so excited to get together every week to share and discuss how we can all coach better together.
If you enjoy any part of this episode, please make sure you give it the old thumbs up. It really does help us to know what you want to hear more about. Also, subscribe to the channel so you can see all of the coaching videos and click on the notifications bell so you know as soon as each video gets posted.
Please make sure to watch all the way to the end. We've got some great opportunities for your professional learning that we think you'll love. Let's get started. Welcome, everyone, to the Coach.Better podcast. And I am here with Tico Oms. And Tico and Clint and I are super excited to talk to you guys about what learning and coaching looks like in a innovative international school with a school leader. Tico, can you start us off by introducing yourself to our audience?
Sure. Hi, I'm Tico Oms. I'm the Middle School Dean of Students at International School Bangkok. I've been in education for about, I want to say 17 years. I'm a mid-career switcher. I have an MBA. I worked at Dell Computers and some other businesses before I pursued my passion and became a teacher. And I've worked for other international schools like Singapore American School and the John F. Kennedy School in Berlin.
Awesome. Thank you, Tico. Now, I know that in all of your various roles, you have worked closely with the coaches in those different schools. So you have a really unique perspective being a school leader who works so closely on the innovation side of things. So we're really excited to kind of hear your thoughts and perspectives on all this stuff. Our very first question is, what do you think coaches do? What is their role in a school?
Yeah. Well, the role of a coach, the first part is going to sound trite, but it's important to say it, which is the role of the coach is support the mission and the vision of the school, right? And so what a coach can do is to help align teachers and the teaching to be consistent with the vision of the school, the vision that the community has put together. All the stakeholders, the board and the leadership and the teachers and the parents have agreed on the kind of school that they want, and coaches should be a very powerful tool to influence that alignment. Now, under that, there's a lot of other things that coaches do. Would you like me to get into that? Okay.
Sure.
So coaches, coaches have to do the technical part and kind of the cultural part of it. Coaches are freed, because coaches are freed from the evaluative piece, they can be a trusted friend and a critical friend. So there's safety for a teacher to be vulnerable around a coach and to ask for support. Coaches can give that support. And coaches can also be proactive. So there's that reactive, proactive piece that the coaches have to get used to. And then the coaches have to have a certain political savvy, shall we say, in order to have the teacher align with the needs of the school. So when you're being innovative, that coach has to help with, this is the right direction, but you need to go 2 steps more aggressively towards that goal. Or, whoa, slow it down. I think you're a little bit ahead of the game. Kind of the pacing of the move towards the innovative piece is also an important part that the coach role has. Not just the how do you do it, but to what pacing do you do? Because when a school is innovative, things start moving at different, it's like getting a genie out of the bottle, right? And so suddenly innovation's out there. And for all these teachers, it means something different, like their dream school and their dream classroom. Those look different. So you need leadership and you need the mission and vision and all that to help align all this energy And the coaches have to align that energy and the pace that they go towards so that we're kind of moving as a unit. Some are pilots and some are real role models of what the possibilities are. Others might be a bit slower, but you have to still move as a unit in the same direction, and coaches help with that as well. And then coaches are also repositories of research and development. And what I mean is just what is best practice, right? Coaches need to spend a certain percent of their time seeing what best practices out there. What are things that are going on in other innovative schools that are like-minded? And that really helps not just on the how, but it really helps in the emotional piece, because when you know that other schools are doing this, struggling here, but have been able to overcome it, then it gives you confidence. We're not the only ones out there doing this, and we're finding it hard. It must be impossible. No, that's not right. Look at this school that found some of the same obstacles in their way, and these are ways that they overcame it, or these are some pivots that they made in order to make the most of the idea, even though some of those obstacles were very real.
So you talked a lot about the mission and the vision and that alignment with the coaches. I'm trying to think if we've interviewed anyone else who's put it in that way. And I think that's a really important distinction to make, because it also means that, every coaching role at every school is going to be slightly different, because the mission and the vision of those schools are different. And how do you ensure that your coaches are truly supporting the direction that you want to go? What are some of the ways that you help to support those coaches, either individually or as an administrative team, to kind of ensure that your coaches are in line with that mission and vision of the school? Are there certain protocols that you run with them, or are there certain discussions that you have with them? Or is it an assumption that, they're working at the school, they understand what the mission and that vision is?
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good question, because the mission and vision isn't addressed enough in a school. It should be kind of that roadmap, right? And so, for example, one of the things that we've recently done is we've looked at our mission and vision. We thought, well, what does that, those Y charts, what does that look like, feel like, and sound like? So this aspirational school that we're describing in our mission and vision, let's get together, let's do a protocol, let's talk about what it looks like, feels like, sounds like, because we need to have a shared understanding of what that school looks like. And if you just put it on the poster and it's just words, everyone's interpreting those words differently, and they might see a different school. When they close their eyes and they envision the school that those words represent, those could be different. So you do need to talk about it. And then, because those are so aspirational and so kind of big thinking, you still have to have something of it. So what does that mean when it comes to instructional practices? What does school look like? What does learning look like with the school that has those aspirations? Yeah, Clint, your question's really good. That work needs to be done so that you have the shared understanding. Hey, that was really cool and innovative. And that's not the school that we are or we want to be. That's not cool, right? So that's what I mean about people going in all sorts of directions. Mm-hmm. We have to align it under, after we make meaning of that mission and vision.
I'm just processing all of that, because you are the only person that has mentioned that so far. Although I like how you started by saying it's trite, because I think that so much of the time when we talk about vision and mission, it is like this surface level conversation. It's not this deeper conversation that we're talking about here, and really understanding what that looks like, feels like, and sounds like, and how it is in practice. I'm really listening to you talk about that. I think it's just an exciting way.
Let me give you an analogy, right? Imagine that you really, really care about service learning, and it's important to you, and you think students should have those experiences. And you look at the mission, it has nothing about giving to others. You look at the vision, nothing about that. You look at the school's values, nothing about that. Well, just know that you are going to be a salmon swimming upstream. Everything you do is going to be hard. Nothing aligns with what you care about, right? Innovation is the same way. If it's not talked about at this high level, you're not going to have any momentum. Does that make sense? You're going against the current. So, you talk about an innovative school. Well, I would say an innovative school has to have mention of this in these foundational types of documents.
And I know we're not like talking about recruitment season, but that just makes me think about how you find the school that's the right fit for you as a coach, as a leader, and all those places, because that's where you start, is with that mission and vision.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. At International School Bangkok, we have a new vision, and part of it is a humanitarian. It's a kind of giving to communities, right? Enhancing the communities around us is there. And that was put in, and when that was put in and that was approved, this enhancing the communities around us, I'm not getting the words exactly right, but it suddenly was like, do you understand what this means for our school? This means our school will strive to become a very different place than it's been. These are powerful words. I think we all support it. Okay, now let's make meaning out of that. And by the way, you guys know that you've voted for a very different place than we've been in the past. We're going to have to work towards that. It's actually pretty exciting.
Cool.
Okay, sorry. And we're talking about coaches. I'm just saying coaches are one powerful tool to align us in that direction. It's not a talk about mission and vision, but what I mean is coaches are this place where the teachers on the ground interacting with students are going to do the things that are going to need support in going in that direction, and coaches have that role to play in that.
Absolutely. So thinking about how coaches work at your school or your previous experience, how do you as a school leader work with the coaches? How do you help support them in implementing this mission and vision? And just like in general, how do you work with your coaches?
Yeah, it's probably a bit the opposite. I think in a lot of ways it feels like, as a school leader, we should be directing the coaches. And what really happens is the opposite. The coaches know what is going on in the classrooms and with students so much better than we do. We tend to get a filtered version of things, and so that boots on the ground type of experience that coaches have is actually illuminating for us about what our school really does look like. Like, I think a lot of times school leaders kind of fool themselves into thinking they know the school, and they don't know it as well as they'd like to believe that they do, right? And so in a lot of ways, that means that we are subordinate to the coaches, and the coach's job is to oftentimes identify how we support them. I need help here to help us achieve these goals, right? Like, I'm seeing this kind of pedagogy, or I'm seeing this kind of instructional practice. These are the priorities. This is what it has to do. And I'm like, I'm so glad I've got a great coach, because they're helping me figure out what my strategy should be and what my priorities are. As I think on the strategic level for the goals of the division.
I am so glad to hear you say that. Sorry, Clint, I know you have something to say. I'm not asking a further question. I'm so glad to hear you say that, because I work with a lot of new coaches, and so many of them are looking for direction from their leadership. And every time I talk to them, I say, you probably know what's going on even more than your school leader does. And you certainly know your subject areas, like being this tech coach or whatever it is you are, better than your school leader does. They have a much different perspective than you. You have to advocate for that. And you have just described that so clearly from a leader's perspective. That was really so good to hear.
Sure. And let's add, if we're going to say an innovative school in particular, one of the defining characteristics of an innovative school is a flat organization with autonomy and with bottom-up type of energy. That means that the leadership is more of a kind of an orchestral role, a little bit more there, a little bit less there, but it's not directive and top down. So if you have a coach that is waiting for direction, they don't belong in an innovative school. They belong in a hierarchical school, right? So we need coaches that have initiative, that are self-starters, who see where the gaps are and say, this is what needs doing. And then you need leadership that has kind of low ego and low control needs to say, have at it. What support do you need? How can I help you get there? Right?
And I was just going to echo a little bit of what Kim was just saying. I think, as a coach, it sounds like a really strong opportunity at International School Bangkok and at other innovative schools is to really focus on that kind of coaching up or managing up with your school leaders, and really trying to think about how you can advocate and how you can get into their ear and how you can help to kind of set the agenda based on your experiences. And then the school leader comes in with a more of a 30,000 foot view, right? And be like, oh, that's a really good idea, but there are these other things in play that you might not be aware of. So you have to take that with a grain of salt. But I think, it's always really, really illuminating for me to hear from the tech facilitators at my school or talking to other tech coaches at other schools, just to kind of get an idea of what that atmosphere is like. Because like you said, that is that boots on the ground, bottom up perspective that you often miss when you spend too much of your day in an office, or when you spend too much of your time in a meeting rather than in front of students.
That's right. That's right. And so, you guys are also making me realize the role of these coaches. So much of that is actually helping the leader create a certain culture, isn't it? So that we do have kind of a flat organization. So, so if a teacher says, just tell me what you want me to do and I'll do it. And you say, whoa, stop there. That's exactly the wrong thing. That's not the type of school we want to be, because that's not an innovative school. Or what are they making us do now? Whoa, easy. No one's making you do anything. This is the direction we're going. Does that make sense? Kind of how we talk, how we communicate, how we feel about the school, that culture, how we do things. That has to be one of the priorities of the coach too, is setting that culture, setting that feeling and that mindset in teachers of, no, this is exciting. This is fun. What do you want? What direction do you want? What do you want to do that's consistent with this direction? How do you want to grow? How do you want to challenge yourself? That's more cool of what are they making us do now,
You said at the very beginning, one of the essential roles of the coach is to be in that non-evaluative role. How do you counsel a coach to sort of stay in that non-evaluative role, but also not seem like they are reporting back on what teachers in the classroom are doing, if they're your trusted advisor about what's happening in classrooms? That's sort of a really fine line to walk. I want teachers to be able to come to me and be like, I'm really having trouble with this. How do you kind of ensure, I don't know, is it discretion on the part of the coach to be like, well, you got to be careful in what you say. It's more about the general atmosphere rather than, teacher in room 101 is doing this and teacher in room 102 is doing that. How do you help them see that distinction?
Yeah, it's probably the hardest balance that coaches have. And there's a few roles in the school that tend to be like that. A department chair. So, you've got I'm your trusted colleague hat, and then you're like, there's something I really need to report to admin hat. And, counselors are like that. Counselors are talking to kids all the time. They got a pretty good feel for teachers that are effective, teachers that have certain things. And when is confidentiality paramount? When is it that we're trying to make it a better school? There are no hard and fast rules. That's just about judgment. And putting rules in place is going to ruin it. It's when you go, I can work with this teacher. This is my, primary thing. That has to be the default. That has to be the standard. And then on occasion, you have to be smart enough to know when you're going to make an exception and say, I've got to report this. This is beyond a certain line. I don't know where that line is, but that's past a certain red line that I can keep to myself. I wish there was something really clever I could say about it, except that I think it's a hard part, and you can't put a rule into it. But I'm sure we've all been out there, whoever's listening to this, us here, that we've had to do that, that judgment of saying, I feel like I'm being a bit of a rat, but I need to tell leadership about this because this is no good. And this is beyond what I think I can keep to myself. And others are like, let's work this out between us. Let's make this better. Hopefully the reporting to leadership is that rare exception where, I can't let this go,
I think it's so interesting to talk to you about this because you're describing a school where coaches are so empowered to be almost part, I know not part of the leadership team, but part of that team that is driving the forward momentum of the school. And not every school views coaches that way. So I think this is going to be really interesting for people who have worked in lots of different schools to see this is one way your role could be perceived in a really innovative school. And it's not always like that. So it's really good to hear. To me, this is like the ideal kind of coaching scenario. And it's good to hear that from you, a school leader, that you want this scenario, because that's what I would want as a coach.
Yeah. Well, and I would argue that if you want to be innovative, this might be the only way to do it. You have to have really empowered coaches and teachers and That middle leadership, 99% of all leadership happens in the middle, and then we call one person the leader. But there's a lot of leaders day to day that are making that place tick, right? And if you're innovative, that's got to be pushed down. And again, the coaches and your middle leaders have to feel like they're empowered and they're autonomous. And you want to have this kind of model where you're saying, this is the direction we're going. Have at it. Do you feel comfortable with that? You've got autonomy. How can I support you? And then they check in when guidance is needed. I need guidance. Okay, let's help you out here. Because it's not like, good luck with that. That's not cool either. Here's what I want you to do. Good luck with that. I'll see you in a couple of months. It's about, this is the direction we want. You have autonomy, and when you need support or you need guidance, come back. And every now and then you might say, and I need air cover. Come fly over, fly the flag or whatever, because I'm having resistance, and then that's part of the role that a leader can do is fire a couple of missiles or something. I know it sounds weird. I'm making military analogies, but I hope you get my point.
I get it. So thinking about coaches in terms of people who support you, not just moving the school forward like we've been talking about, but like people who are there to support teaching and learning and including leadership at the school, what are some good ways that coaches can support you as a leader in your role? Like coaches looking for opportunities to work with their leadership, what can they do?
Well, I think there's kind of that saying of the leader says, let's go to the moon, woo, visionary. And then the coach says, okay, let's build that rocket, And so the coaches are the ones who have the attention to detail and who understand what it means for real. There was an article by a headhunter who said, in all the industries I've worked in, this is kind of a high-powered headhunter, the type that would find the new CEO for General Electric. He said, no matter the industry, there's kind of 4 types of workers. There's the visionary, transformational leader type. Then there's the person who makes that vision become a reality. Then there's a person who sees an existing process and says, I can do that better. I can improve that. And then there's the one who says, I'm just going to keep the train running on time, right? When you think of the coaches, so the leaders got some of that for that visionary stuff. Who's going to make it real? Who's going to improve the existing processes? That second and third slot, that's the heavy lifting that we need from coaches, right? And it's really hard to imagine the leader saying, I'm going to walk into that math classroom and help that math teacher do this better. It's false, right? But the coach can say, look, when we're going to improve our math instruction, I think this is the way we're going to go. Let me help build that rocket so that we can get to the moon. That's that expertise, that understanding of process and priorities, of pacing, the understanding of personalities, all those things are very helpful for leaders to achieve their goals.
It sounds like for you, the number one opportunity then is helping you kind of articulate what that vision is and helping them come up with a plan of how do I make that vision actionable. They may not quite have a complete understanding, right? That's where that relationship between coach and administration is really important. You're saying that you want to see this as part of our classroom culture. Let me kind of talk to you about that and understand what that really means so that I can help teachers realize what that's going to look like in their classroom.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's something that's often missing is that dialogue back and forth between maybe administration and the coaches, and maybe it's that perspective of the administrators and also that perspective of the coaches of realizing like that is one amazing way in which you can utilize your coaching team is to turn those big lofty ideas and those visions of, whether it's differentiation or inclusion or all of these things that are really, really important to a school. And then we're like, yes, we want to do that. We know classroom teachers don't always have the time or their focus is on the students in the here and now, right? And the coaches then are on how are we going to transform this into meeting that new vision or meeting those new ideas.
Yeah, that's right. And that's always a balance too, right? What are we doing now today, day to day, meeting kids' needs, while at the same time balancing efforts to become the school that we want to be. Yeah, it's the here and now versus the future aspirational kind of goals. And Clint, I'd add that I think I'm also trying to say clearly, I believe in strong middle leadership, and that if you want to achieve the goals of the school in a way that everyone feels like they're a part of it and they own it, and that's the way innovative schools work, you need strong middle leaders. And I don't know who said that quote, but great leaders don't create followers, right? Great leaders create other leaders, and that's a big role of leadership for me. I love creating great leaders who can see their skills go up and they become more confident in their leadership at that level. That's great. And then that really helps the school to achieve its goals. And sometimes you lose them because then they become deputy principals or principals in the future. But that should be a point of pride. You know, schools that create great leaders that go to other schools, those are great schools, you know, even though they lose some of their best people. They're creating more, they're following up, you know.
You've described this, what I hear as like super empowering and engaging opportunity for coaches to work with you and to be those middle leaders that are so needed. What happens when you're in a school that doesn't have coaches? Then how does this all work? Like, what do you do when you don't have coaches to be this kind of glue between the vision and the action?
Yeah. You have, you know, there's the dangerous area. The dangerous area is it's top down, it's rigid, and you are kind of saying adherence to what I say is what success looks like for a teacher. That can be dangerous. And so you have to look for another way of creating middle leaders. So if you don't have coaches, you might have grade level leaders. You might have department chairs, something like that. They can function as coaches and to help both with the direction of the school and help manage the leaders, and then also kind of trickle that down into what's going on day to day in the classroom, right? So yeah, if there are no coaches, you're going to have to find alternate folks. But to say, here's admin, here's teachers, I've just never seen that work. It just becomes hierarchical and it feels like it becomes rigid oftentimes, right? It just doesn't have the dynamism of an innovative school.
So you're talking about really how essential coaches are and even if you have to find alternate people to kind of be those coaches, when you think about coaching within this innovative school environment, what are the essential elements for this to be successful? What do you need to build that coaching culture that you're talking about here?
Well, the word is culture, you know, and you have to have the systems and the structures, the time, all those things. Those are the technical pieces. The most important part is the cultural piece, right? I think it became pretty popular in schools to read Patrick Lencioni's book, The Advantage. It's about organizational health. Anthony Muhammad has written some books about organizational health, but you've got to get that right. And the reason I talk about organizational health is because trust is so important. And in a healthy school, you can be vulnerable and you can trust, and you have people who want to grow and learn. That's what a healthy school looks like. Well, suddenly you know that's a coach's dream, what I'm describing, right? Then you can put in structures, and those are important too, don't get me wrong. If we don't put in the supporting, how are we going to meet? Where are we going to find the time? Are we going to get the support we need? Those things are all important. I don't want to minimize them, but the key component is the word you say, it's the culture. Do you have a healthy culture that allows for vulnerability, for trust, and the idea that a good professional learns and grows just like they want their students to learn and grow?
I don't want to talk over Clint because I keep talking over Clint. I feel like you're going to say something, Clint. Are you?
No. I'm just thinking about that idea of organizational health, and you know, I think a lot of schools may have coaching positions, but may not have a coaching culture already, right? And some schools put the cart before the horse, right? They put the positions before the culture. And I you know, it's obvious when you say it, Tico, but if you don't have somebody who has the title of coach, there will always be people who are coaching in your schools. I mean, that is just, I think, you know, those are just the people that you want to work with. Maybe they're your department heads. Maybe there's somebody in your department. Maybe they're the administrators themselves. But as professionals, we all need coaches in some way, shape, or form. To think that I work in a school that doesn't have a coach. Well, maybe you work in a school that doesn't have a titled coach, but there are people there that are coaching. But
and
sometimes there are.
Sorry to interrupt. I do promise you this. If there is no one looking for others to help them become better, I bet that's not a very good school. Because for sure, if the adults aren't learning and growing, and if they're not looking for people to help them learn and grow, the kids are probably not doing a lot of learning and growing either. No? So yeah, even if you don't have the coach, if you have people looking for coaching and mentoring and support, hey, come see, I'm trying this thing here. I bet that's still a pretty good school, you know? But when people aren't collaborating, they're closing the door, we work in isolation, it's tough for me to imagine a successful school that looks like that.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering what advice might you have for coaches that are in that position, but maybe they don't feel like the culture is where it needs to be in order to be truly effective? Like, what are like the little, what's the low hanging fruit maybe, you know, or the high leverage, or, you know, even low leverage, high impact kind of things that they can do straight away that's going to like help them be like, oh, that's made some inroads, you know?
Yeah. Well, let's say the overall culture isn't great. The coach has got to build it for themselves. They have to be an island of positive culture of health, right? And that comes, you know, it seems like trust comes from, and can we agree that trust is the key component for a coach to be successful? I've built trust with the teachers. They trust me, they invite me in, and they listen to me, right? And they're allowed to be vulnerable. And to have that vulnerability, you have to show that you're competent, you're worth listening to, and that you're safe. You know, you're a reliable person. You have integrity. You know, so if you get that integrity, you have that competence, then you just start building relationships. You know, you just start connecting as much as you can. So now you've got relationships. Now you've got, you know, that connection. You've got the integrity. You've got the competence. So who cares what's going on around me? People know that this is what I represent. You have to do it for yourself. It's kind of that granular. I'll be me as an individual. I'll be an island of healthy kind of rapport with the people around me. Again, it'll be harder because you're maybe swimming upstream a little bit. But you know this. You've been in places where you think, here's the culture. That person is good. I trust that person. They have integrity. And they take the time to get to know me. I think they care about me. Bam, I can be vulnerable. I will listen. We have rapport. And the world around me may not be great, but with this person, I love working with them, you know?
I love your island. What did you say? An island of trust. I love that concept. And that's, no matter what school environment you're in, you can become that person in that school environment. I think that's really powerful for coaches that might not be in this ideal, innovative school environment that we're talking about, because anyone can do that. Anyone can be that person. I mean, you have to have the skills and the ability to do it, but anyone who wants to can really do that. So that's coaching working either in a whole school system structure that is built up to have coaching working. And then there's coaching working when it's just one person like trying their best, like a salmon swimming upstream. Where does coaching, or where do coaches fail? When does it not work, and how can we fix it?
You know, and I would have said that even if I hadn't said the preceding thing. You know, when they don't show themselves to be competent. I'm going to go into your math room. I'm going to talk to you about math teaching, and it's silly. You know, it's like, you're not competent. You don't know what you're talking about. You have to be an expert in your field, right? That just like a teacher, relationships matter, engaging lessons matter. If you don't know what you're teaching or talking about, that's a problem. You know, coaches need to know what they're talking about. They have to be seen as being competent. Number two, they have to build the relationships, right? They have to have connections with the teachers around them. And then number three, it's the integrity piece. That's just really important. So it sounds like I'm going back to a previous answer. That answer works for that question too. The opposite of that answer is that's how they fail, you know? Can I say one more thing though? I think from a leadership perspective, so that's, you know, I'm looking at that question from a teaching perspective, but I want to look at it from a leadership perspective. I lose faith in coaches when they're not self-starters, when they don't have initiative. If I have to tell coaches what to do and what the priorities are, I feel like, man, I'll just do it myself, because you're supposed to support me. And part of that is taking stuff off my plate, but I know that we're going in the right direction, and then you're helping us move forward. So if you don't have initiative, if you don't have energy, if you're not a self-starter, I mean, those things are tough for a leader to have a coach like that. I have to micromanage. Well, you didn't tell me to do that. Really? Really? With what I've got going on, if I've got to tell you how to do your job, that's not great. I want to hire someone who knows what the job looks like, is going to be able to manage themselves, set their schedule, and then tell me, look, this is why I'm doing this schedule. This is why my priorities are, dear leader, because I think this is how we're going to move the school forward. I'm like, yeah, sounds great, or a little bit more of you remember I said the orchestra kind of analogy, a little more of this, a little less of that. That's great. But give me the plan that we can work off of. Don't make me write that plan. Don't make me tell you how to do your job. That would drive me nuts.
So you've already kind of answered my next question, but I'm going to ask it to you anyway, just in case there's anything else in there. What makes a coach invaluable to you? And you've described who you want to hire. So is there anything else, or maybe you can summarize those kind of key points about what makes coaching work for you? And then is there anything else that coaches do that make them invaluable to you as a leader?
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like I've answered that question throughout the interview, but someone who helps the leader get the school where we want it to be, that's one of those big vanilla generalization over, obvious things, but a leader's trying to get the school someplace. This leader has a vision of what a great school looks like. Is this person really helping us move forward in that? Are they like an invaluable, it sounds like a resource, they're a person, absolutely. But, are they invaluable in helping us move that way? Well, then that's a great coach. If we said, if that coach wasn't here and we're not going to miss them and we're not necessarily changing the dynamic of the school, that's too bad. We want coaches that make an impact, that make a difference in getting the school to where we want it to be. Yeah.
I think, it's a good question for coaches to ask themselves every day, like, what impact am I having? What would happen if I weren't here? What makes me irreplaceable almost? Maybe it's my relationships, maybe it's a particular set of work that I'm doing, maybe it's the knowledge, the competence that I hold. But constantly, it's impossible to measure impact. Well, I don't know if impossible, but it's very difficult to measure impact because there are so many different facets of it. But I think that's a question that, for a review of a coach, or for, even like a self-assessment, is like, what impact am I having day to day, week to week, quarter by quarter, year by year? And what legacy, if I were to leave tomorrow, what legacy would I leave? I think that's sometimes you don't see your impact until after you've left. But it's always good to kind of keep thinking about it as you're going.
That's true. That's a great question, isn't it, for a coach? If I didn't exist, how different would this place be? And if it's not very different, that's kind of sad, right? And that would be true for any position, any job. You want to say, this place is better because I'm here.
And I think sometimes it's hard. Sorry, I want to say one thing. I think sometimes it's hard to reflect on that during your tenure, because when things are working well, we almost never appreciate them. It's only when somebody's gone or when something's not working that we're like, oh, this should be like this. So I think I'm just highlighting again, you guys have already said it, but just highlighting again how important it is to think about that institution without you there. Because I think that's sometimes an easier way to see the impact that you're having. Because if you're doing a good job, you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
Sometimes people just don't notice you're doing a good job.
And I agree. Like I'm very comfortable with numbers, but I am someone who believes that some of the most important stuff you cannot measure, right? And coaching would be hard to measure, but there are some pretty clear indicators. If the coach is always being asked to be in a committee, in a team, join this meeting, or they're good, right? But if the coach is trying to figure out how to fill their time because no one's really that interested in having them around and joining their team or coming to their club, I don't know what the measurement is, but clearly they're not that effective. They're not in demand, right? So that kind of, one of those indicators is how much in demand are they? I've got to go to this meeting because they want me part of this committee. Oh, there's this task force on this and they want me here. And, you know, and this teacher's asked me to join this and I'm helping write this unit here and blah, blah, blah. And then suddenly you're like, I can tell that person's good, right?
Mm. So you've had a lot of experience with coaches and obviously with organizations like beyond schools. It's clear to me, I think, that you really value the role of the coach within your school and within other schools as well. Can you think of anything that made you realize, that really like brought to the forefront like the value of the coach for you personally, and that might explain some of your advocacy for coaching positions in schools? Is there something that I was working without a coach, or I had my first coach who did this and he was like, oh my goodness, that was amazing. I now see the true potential of coaching in schools for teachers and for students.
Yeah.
And for administrators.
That's a really good question. And that isn't, I think that through this interview, what I'm saying to you is, through my experiences in a high-tech company where you have to move quickly and you have to be unbelievably flexible and adaptable to market needs, right? If you are late with this new product to market, you're dead, right? Or technology has changed, you've got to move quickly. The high-tech companies have to be fast, they have to have high quality. It's all about speed and adaptability and things. That's innovation, right? And it doesn't mean schools have to move fast. There's reasons for that pressure in high tech, but innovative schools tend to their pacing starts going up. We've probably all noticed that. I think what I'm saying more is you have to devolve that leadership. Like leadership just has to go down and power has to go down. And coaches are one of the big roles where that new power has to go to. Does that make sense? So I think that's what I've been saying. I would say the same thing about a grade level leader. I would say the same thing about a department chair is we have to revision that role from, I had a meeting with the principal and he wants me to tell you these things. Now focus on that. That's not what middle leadership should look like anymore. So I do believe in coaching. I think it's great. I just say that I've mostly been speaking about just middle leadership and what an organization looks like built to succeed if it wants to be innovative and dynamic. Is that okay? I know it sounds like I'm avoiding the question. I'm not. I'm just saying there's a bigger thing going on, which is middle leadership needs to be empowered and feel like they have a certain amount of autonomy and support to be successful.
Fantastic. I think putting it in that greater context is I think it's helpful for we said this before, I think it's helpful for coaches who might be listening to this, but I also think it's helpful for administrators who are listening to this and also trying to see like, where does coaching fit into my school, or where could it potentially fit into my organization, or how could it fit into my organization? I think as that extension of middle leadership and as, like you said, that devolvement of power, that diffusion of power and influence from, your principals and assistant principals to teacher leaders who oftentimes have more credibility with the teaching ranks, but obviously not the authority or the title, but they do have that credibility and they do have that almost sometimes easier to have rapport with those teachers to be able to move them from point A to point B. And how are we going to use those individuals in the school to do that effectively?
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes me think of things, sometimes you guys are asking when it goes wrong, what does it look like? Well, it goes wrong when title's important, competence is important, right? Having the right person with the right skill set doing certain jobs is important regardless of title. When, one of those leadership questions is, from where do you get your authority? If you get your authority because of your title, that's a problem, right? Your authority should come from other things, my relationships with people, my commitment to the task, these things are so much more powerful when it comes to leadership. And these coaches should be leaders, absolutely. So, and maybe we've made a mistake throughout this interview in saying leaders, leaders, leaders. There's admin with these titles. Coaches are leaders. They have to think of themselves as leaders and behave that way. And then something else you said that I was thinking of, if we're going to talk about admin or kind of the ones with the title, could you imagine a meeting, like just picture this scenario, bunch of, principals and head of school, deputy head of school, deputy principals are sitting around going, we should be more innovative, and we should be more dynamic, and we should take more risks. Okay, cool. Well, what does leadership look like in a school that's more innovative and dynamic? No. We're not going to question how we lead, but we want the school to be more innovative and more no. You have to start by thinking, how do I lead? What does good leadership look like in a place that's dynamic and innovative? And if you believe in the coaching model, again, how do you lead differently if you want your coaches to be successful? Because if you're still directive and rigid and top down, your coaches aren't going to really be empowered, and teachers are going to see through that. I'm not going to mess with the coach because I know the power's up there, and adhering to what that person says is more important than having this coaching relationship. So
this is such a valuable conversation, not just for coaches to get the insight into what a school leader thinks about all these different things that we asked you, but like Clint was alluding to before, I think so valuable for other school leaders who aren't quite sure what to do with their coaches. And I think there are a lot of them because the position title has become really popular. There's a lot of people that want that job. There's not always a lot of people who know what that job is, either in the coaching position or in the leadership position. So I think going through all of these different, almost like different sides of the same kind of perspective that you've been sharing with us this whole time, I think it's really valuable for lots of different audiences. So thank you so much for your time today, Tico. That was really insightful and really made me feel really good about coaching in schools and how much we can actually have an impact on what happens at school. So thank you for your time today.
Can I make one last comment?
Please.
Because of my background in business, I've just seen a different world. One of the things that seems to make education unique is this real distinct line between admin and teachers. And that's been a weakness in this world of education. In most other organizations, it's just, you kind of have marginal different new titles and you go step by step, but there's no place where say it's us versus them, or there's a group here and there's a group there. Does that make sense? And that's what's cool about this new, and it's not necessarily new, but empowering middle leaders is very powerful in closing. There's an us, leaders, teachers, middle leaders. We're all in this together, and there's a role in unifying us. Not there's this group that makes this group do things. That's not how it should be. That's not what healthy places are. And I would say that's been a flaw with schools for a long time. And coaches have a role to play in saying there isn't this distinct line. And there is a gradual progression of more influence that you can have in a school. So thank you. And I enjoyed it very much. Thanks again.
Good.
Thanks, Tico.
Sure. All right. See you guys.
Bye. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you'll know when we release a new video each week. Here at Eduro Learning, we want to help you coach better. To get you started, we've got some great resources to share with you right now. The first is a free digital download called 5 Strategies for Your Coaching Toolkit, and it's linked in the description box below. Plus, you can join our Facebook group, Coach.Better, to connect with other instructional coaches around the world. The link is also in the description box below. If you're looking for even more learning, we are just about to start our next cohort of the Coach Microcredential. This academic year-long mentorship program includes 26 weeks of course content, a supportive network of like-minded participants who are coaches, and your own private mentor. Cohort 3 starts on April 28, 2019, and registration opens on March 4th. If you are ready to sign up right away, we have some great early bird bonus offers starting on January 15th, and spaces are limited, so please check it out. Are you ready to coach better? Get a preview to what you'll learn and see what past participants have to say at edurolearning.com/coach. And finally, if you haven't caught it yet, our weekly Coach.Better SlowChat on Twitter will help you build your professional learning network, and it's facilitated by 3 of our awesome The Coach participants, so you can see the types of coaches that you'll be learning with. Check out the link in the description box below. We hope that all of these resources are useful for you, and we'd love to hear what you think about them. If you have questions about coaching or guests you'd like to see featured, please leave us a comment and we will do our best to make it happen. See you next time.